the subprime crisis has had a very profound impact on the discipline of risk management. While there's been plenty of blame to spread around for the crisis in which we find ourselves now, there's no question that this crisis has been a catastrophic failure of risk management in some of the largest financial institutions. And taking that a step further, if the market and depositors and taxpayers and other financial institutions are going to have confidence in banks to restore the functioning of the financial system, it's imperative that we be able to restore the confidence of all stakeholders in risk management. And in order for that to happen, we need to compellingly demonstrate that we've learned some very important lessons from this crisis. I think it's very important that we not have an overreaction on the regulatory side, and I think most of the senior regulators and supervisors, at least in the developed markets, understand this point and are trying to move with caution, given the fragility of the system today. I think supervisors have already laid out a pretty clear agenda, and there's an industry agenda in response to the crisis as well. One of the key elements of that supervisory regulatory agenda is to strengthen risk management, to clearly articulate the lessons learned from the crisis and ensure that firms respond with a dramatic strengthening of their risk management capabilities. I think we've seen an important development this year, which is for the very first time there's been a global group of folks through the Institute of International Finance sit down together at a committee and produce a report which lays out in one place best practice principles and specific recommendations for risk management. What I would personally like to see 1 year from now at this conference is that banks around the world, not just in the core developed markets, have taken some of those recommendations on board, examined them to see which ones are relevant for their businesses, their activities, and have begun to move quite aggressively to implement those recommendations to strengthen their risk management in light of lessons learned from the crisis.
And will there still be CROs at the conference next year?
Yes, we've got seeing fewer and fewer CROs, and in fact that's been one of the very great impacts of this crisis, is that a number of very highly regarded, distinguished, deeply experienced senior risk managers have been casualties of this crisis, somewhat less publicly perhaps in some cases than the CEOs that they've worked with. So there's really been quite a toll taken on the discipline, lost a lot of experienced leadership, and I think we need to see a reconstitution of the CRO role. One of the major recommendations coming out of that global industry effort through the IIF was a significant strengthening of the CRO role. What you often have is a CRO, but it's a little more of a figurehead role in some institutions. It hasn't perhaps had the ability to influence the key decisions of the institution. And this report, these best practice recommendations, call for the Chief Risk Officer to have sufficient stature and influence to be able to impact the key decisions of the organization, i.e. put teeth into the role of the CRO, and I think that's going to be extremely important. We've had several speakers here at this conference make clear that the firms that did better in the crisis, everybody's been affected, but the firms that relatively speaking did better had a much stronger culture. And in fact, in isolation, the risk management function and the CRO are somewhat constrained in their ability to be effective. Culture is very important. So what are the characteristics of a strong risk culture? First of all, dialogue, breaking down the silos, if you will, dialogue between the business unit heads, the leadership, and all of the functions, finance, risk, treasury, and so forth. Secondly, rapid escalation of information from various parts of the organization into that dialogue. And third, an explicit, articulated, clear and transparent ambition and commitment to balance risk and return. It's not all about revenue. to listen to the concerns being raised by the risk function, yes, but also others from elsewhere in the organization, and to make risk a priority and to clearly evidence that in the actions at the top of the house, to walk the talk. This is the tone at the top. And too few firms were able to strike that balance or even seek to strike that balance in the crisis. To sort of sum up, there's a very, very big challenge now for the discipline of risk management. We need to rebuild confidence that risk management is a worthy endeavor. It's worth the dollars, it's worth the expense. It's a value-adding place for talented, experienced people to be, and that it's an important part of the journey and the way forward for sustainable performance and growth through the remainder of the crisis and beyond. And I think we've got a lot of work to do as a profession to demonstrate that we've digested and learned those lessons and can rebuild the confidence of all the stakeholders in the system.